I can't even remember who was the first person who sent the message between myself and you, Omar. Whether you mentioned to me, should we have a sort of conference and pair it up with the sevens?
I
And
might have said it's quite sunny in Capetown in early December. I think it's probably a good time.
I would say Umar was looking at an excuse to go and get a bit of sunshine. Welcome back to the Sports Dentistry podcast. The All Blacks are in town. Umar, the All Blacks are in Edinburgh. Are you heading to Murrayfield this weekend?
I'm not quite sure yet. I'm not working at the game this weekend, so I'm trying to source some tickets through contacts of mine and see if I'm able to get something last minute. It's just I haven't been able to focus completely on what's been happening with the Autumn Internationals because there's been quite a stuff going on behind the scenes. But I think it's probably right to let the people know what has been going on. It has been quite an eventful summer from my side of things. Now, you probably remember that I was meant to be going to Brazil with the MCC to play some cricket.
That's right.
So the squad left last Wednesday and I was not on the plane.
You missed your flight. You went out.
I missed the flight. I tried to get to the airport. I live 5 minutes from the airport. I just never got there in time and I missed the flight. Unfortunately that wasn't the case. And I think it's important that we do talk about this because it's a major life event happening in my side of things with regards to my family. And unfortunately, my wife was diagnosed with colon cancer earlier on this summer, which came as a massive shock to all of us. And we spent quite a lot of time discussing and chatting things and what we'd have to do. And long story short is that she had some surgery and ended up having to get some chemotherapy. But I'm pleased to report that she finished her chemotherapy last Thursday evening after 4 rounds of infusions and 555 tablets. It's safe to say that at such a young age, for someone to have it and somebody so obviously close to me and somebody that I love a lot, to see them go through such a hard thing was difficult. But I was lucky to have people like yourself, John, and good friends of mine and friends and family and my wife's friends and family to be on to rally on. You know, we sit here now and I look back and think that life can change in an instant and it's important to do the things that you love doing. And this podcast has been that for me. And I did discuss with you and we had a good chat when this all happened, whether we should continue on with it. And, you know, I felt just spending the time to speak to you every week or every other week, took my mind off things. And, you know, we do get on very, very well. So I want to say publicly, thank you for being a good guy, for being a good mate and to help me get through that difficult period of time. And it does put life into perspective, but it has nailed the fact that I really enjoy doing this. I really enjoy doing this podcast. I really enjoy talking about sports dentistry and about the people that we've had on and where we hopefully are taking things. There's some really exciting things coming up, which we'll be able to share with the listeners very, very soon. But that's kind of been the personal thing that's been happening in my life. And unfortunately, I'm not in Brazil, yes. So I'll have to extend my apologies to our colleagues and friends out there who I said I would meet up with. However, it's important to discuss these things. I know there's other podcasts that we've chatted about in terms of things can happen in life. And it's really important to be honest and to have this discussion because yes, this is quite a good podcast when we talk about our jobs and talk about serious things like teeth, but also we talk about a lot of non-serious stuff, which are a lot of the stories you come up with, which we enjoy to listen to. But I also think it's important that we talk about things that need to be talked about because it can affect a lot of people. And we just want to say that we're there to help. And if somebody does ever have anything happen to them, unfortunately, then there are people out there who would be willing to listen and talk. And I'm one of those people.
Yeah, you've been yourself and Julia and your family have had a tough few months since the diagnosis and the treatment and the ongoing battle. And it's so common now. Like earlier this year in February, I lost a first cousin at 39 and she was brought up actually in South Africa and we were talking about going to South Africa. So it's just so happened. My godmother, when I was younger, she passed away with bowel cancer at mid-40s, where I'm heading to now, and left 3 young kids behind. So it really resonates home as well, because I lost my mum to cancer there just shortly after the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham when we were both down, after a year long of her undergoing treatment and stuff. So it's really it's such a tough disease to wrap your head around, and you can ask these questions, especially when it happens to someone so young, like why me and why us and stuff, and there's just no answer to it. I have a friend as well, mid-40s. He had a pain in his chest 2 years ago, and he went and they scanned him for his heart and picked up lung cancer, and he was fit and healthy, and he's undergoing it. And then you look at some of the high-profile athletes, with Chris Hoy, and all that he's achieved, and recently somebody as well that's a little bit closer to where I'm from, Keir McGeehan, who was as a multiple Olympian, trains out of Manchester, has trained has medals at the Commonwealth Games. She has went off the radar since the summer because she released that she was undergoing treatment. And she did a Q&A for us. We held a celebration of the ladies' football. It was like 25 years or 30 years maybe since they launched in our club last year, and I was hosting a Q&A session of different people over the years, and she very kindly came down and spoke about her experiences and about her heartache, being injured in Paris and having to pull out last minute, and how she was pushing to go to LA, and LA would, because of her age, it would be her 4th Olympics, and it would be her last one, and how LA would signify something really important to her, because her first coach, he had medalled at the last LA Olympics, and about how, and she was speaking about this in November, and now she's in a similar situation where her whole life has been turned upside down. She's had to put her professional sport on hold to battle this, and we see it every year as well. When you look at the fundraising that goes on, the stand up to cancer, it's 1 in 2. It's almost 1 in 2 people now at some stage in their life will get it. So that's 50% chance it's either me or you are. You know what I mean?
That's it. It's a 50 chance. But it's interesting. You should say that about the athletes having it, because also as part of this dentistry as a whole, oral cancer is on the rise. And that's something that we need to look out for, especially in athletes and young athletes. And you've just talked about some of the athletes there. And also the number 1 pick for the NBA that just went past, he just got diagnosed with testicular cancer.
Oh.
So it just goes to show you that obviously cancer takes no prisoners, and it's something that we will talk about. I'm sure we will do some sort of series on oral cancer or oral pathology, certainly, because when we're doing screenings, that's obviously that we're going to be looking at too. We're not just looking at hard tissue. We need to be looking at soft tissue. We need to be looking at the tongue, floor of the mouth, the palate. We know that as well. So that's really something important, because obviously, because it is becoming more prevalent and there's a high occurrence happening in younger patients, that's certainly the demographic that we've been dealing with quite a lot. And when we're doing a lot of the scanning for the prevent mouth guards, we should be looking at these things as well. It's really, really important. It's amazing how you can just have a quick look around, and when something doesn't look normal, it's quite obvious, isn't it? If you're looking at a white patch, you're looking at a red patch, or if you're looking at a lump or a bump, because you just look so used to seeing normal mucosa or normal papilla or just normal ridges, etc. When something doesn't look quite right, then you have to highlight that. And I think that's something that we should really consider. And I think that's made me kind of think a little bit more about what we should be doing as sports dentists in terms of that side of things, and hopefully trying to improve oral cancer or mouth cancer awareness amongst athletes. Like you said, 1 in 2, the statistics are absolutely mental. It used to be 1 in 3, I can remember, maybe even 5-6 years ago. Now we're looking at 1 in 2. So it's something we have to consider. I know it's a bit of a different subject to start this podcast on, but I think it's important to highlight.
Oh, definitely. And just with the oral cancer stuff, because I used to do a lot of like corporate talks when I had the role with the dental insurance company, and the big thing about oral cancer is the whole risk has completely changed. As you said, it's a lot more in younger younger people now, younger athletes and younger patients, which are our athlete group. It used to be very stereotypical. It would have been your elderly gentleman that smoked so much a day and drunk alcohol. He was your high risk person, but now it's right down. It's right across the board with other risk factors out there. A lot of young people are getting it, and I have had a few patients myself, young patients that I've had to refer off to get inspected, and they've had to get biopsies and stuff cut out as well. So it is something that probably something we overlook, possibly whenever we're talking about screening of athletes.
Mm-hmm.
We're very much looking at it from the oral health and maybe looking at their occlusion, and we're trying to pick things up that way. I'm looking at previous oral trauma, but it's probably something that we kind of overlook a wee bit, and maybe we should be taking out the fluorescent lights that they can help do early diagnosis. Maybe that should be something, because it's very easy to implement that. It's just having a different type of light to be able to shine it on the mucosa. Maybe that's something that we should be looking at including into our athletes or screening. I'd be very surprised if anybody is including that at the moment, because it's not something that I've heard discussed in sports dentistry circles. So it's important that it was highlighted. Like, this is a chance for us to start raising awareness of the importance of that, and maybe we can look at trying to promote that being included then, or at least a bit more of an awareness to be looking out for that. We see it in the screening, like the screening toolkit and stuff our good colleague Julie's put together. It's not mentioned in it. Maybe that's what it should be. Maybe in our screening sheets that we bring out to fill in with athletes, there should be that question. Obviously, we give them everything a screen around the soft tissues, but maybe we should actually mark that they've been checked and they've been okay. So that's definitely a good point that has arose from this life experience, that sports dentistry spin-off that we've took from the life experience that you're going through at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a topic for discussion. And these are the sort of things, week to week, we're bringing to the podcast. We're talking about more and more about it. I've obviously in my head, I'm just starting to think, actually, it'd be really good if you can get, Max Facts or oral medicine on, and we can discuss that, because there'll be new signs, there'll be new symptoms that maybe we're not aware of that we should be looking at. And certainly because presentation is happening more and more in younger patients, maybe it's slightly different, and it is something that we should be looking at more, certainly. And I think it's, as time goes on, unfortunately, it probably will get higher. It just seems like everything at the moment seems to be getting more and more difficult with regards to younger generation or younger population getting disease, whether it's cancer, whether it's something else. But it's certainly the prevalence is getting higher amongst younger people, and it doesn't take any prisoners.
Do you think prevalence is getting higher, or just because of social media and communication, we're more aware of everything now than we are?
That is a great question. And that is something that I was speaking to my wife about, because, she's obviously been off work for several months now, and she's had a lot of time to think. She's been speaking to other people, and a lot of the people that she's been kind of in touch with have been younger patients as well, who've had this sort of similar sort of disease or diagnosis. But it's definitely more accessible to get information now, because people are talking about it more and more now. Whereas maybe previously people wouldn't talk about it. It would be something that thou shalt not talk about, just keep it under wraps, keep it under the radar. But actually, we're all very quick, me included, to talk about all the good stuff and shout it from the rooftop to say all the good stuff's happening, and this is going well, this is going well, this is going great. But actually, there's a lot of demons kicking around where people should talk about it, whether it's mental health, which we've touched on several times, whether it's physical health, whether it's family health. There's so many other things that we should talk about, because there's other people who are either in the same situation or have been in a similar situation who can discuss that with you. And dentistry itself is such a hard job, as we know. And when you're sitting in the surgery and you're in the four walls and you think it's just you against the world, but when you speak to your colleagues, everybody's been through similar cases or similar difficult situations. So I do feel it's great that we're able to speak openly about it on this podcast. There's certainly nothing to fear or worry about, and I've not got any I don't make any apologies for opening up this episode with talking about that because it's something close to my heart. I know it's something that's close to your heart, but we need to look at the positives. If we can help other people raise awareness, and if it helps somebody, that's brilliant.
Yeah, definitely. We spoke about last week. We spoke about suicide in the dental profession, and I explained that it used to be a really high. The highest suicide was in dentists and in farmers. Not really me from a farming background. Becoming a dentist really set myself up. But then I've had now that we're talking about cancer, I've had a cousin on my dad's side that passed away at 30 with bowel cancer. I've had a cousin on my mum's side actually passed away at 30. A cousin on my dad's side passed away there at 39. My own mum had a type of cancer that's genetic. My godmother passed in the early mid-40s. So I think I'm screwed anymore. I think your chances,
Oh,
I think out of
no.
the 50-50 chances here, you're looking pretty good. You're looking pretty good here. Between me and you, like.
Oh God! Listen, I don't want to be hearing.
I could tell you the more you get exposed to it and you hear these people going through these hardships, and the older you get, you start getting aches and pains. And if an ache and pain is there for more than 2 days, I've already self-diagnosed myself as having terminal. I'm just like, that's me. I'm terminal. That's it. That's it. Kicking it now.
But that's why it's even more important we do more pods, because we need to get a daily story or a weekly story from John's life, because you bring smiles to people's faces, mate. And you've got me through some dark times this summer. So I think you just need to give the public what they want. So let's get back to New Zealand rugby in Edinburgh this weekend. Lauren will be absolutely mad keen to watch that. I know she's going to Cardiff to watch the All Blacks down there. But yeah, I think it's all sold out. I know it's all sold out at Murrayfield, but I'm going to try and see if I can wangle some tickets somewhere. But yeah, just with everything going on, I haven't been able to think about it. They played the Irish, did they not, last week?
They played and beat the Ireland in Chicago last week.
Yeah.
Now, they've been doing this. They played Ireland, beat them in Chicago 9 years ago. Now there's talk about the next Rugby World Cup and the men's is in Australia, and they're talking about the one off top being in the US, and they're trying to build a game.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure. I'm presuming you didn't see it, but I was really disappointed, and I've heard with a lot of the feedback that just I watched it obviously on TV, it didn't go, but it felt off. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't the same high quality of watching it that we're used to. Like even there's a red card decision in the first 3 minutes, and they couldn't even get the replays done on the TV screen. That the referee had to run off to a small screen on the halfway line, and that whole dilemma took ages. Do you know what I mean? It was really, especially it was in the Chicago Bears Stadium, and they're so used to putting on like a big production every time they have a home match in the NFL. So it was a little bit disappointing from that perspective, and the rugby was a little bit disappointing, and Ireland losing the game was a little bit disappointing that the All Blacks turned it on the last 20 minutes and got 3 tries to win comfortably enough in the end. So it's just an aura around the All Blacks, isn't there?
Yeah, definitely.
It's like there's just something with the All Blacks that it's almost like you don't mind getting beat by the All Blacks because they are the All Blacks.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? They just seem to be a really likable team. There's a real likable feel around them. They've got this aura around them. It's almost like everybody's second team that they're happy to see them go well.
I just find it remarkable that they're such a small nation in relative terms, in terms of population, yet they bring out some absolute bangers when it comes to athletes, not just rugby, but just generally athletes. How do they do that? And then we look at the Scots or the Irish. We're obviously very, very good too, don't get me wrong, but like we're talking about world champions, multiple world champions, and certainly with rugby. And when I've ever been to Murrayfield and I've watched them live, everybody just sits up and takes notice. And it's just, like you said, it's an aura, and it's hard to describe because you have to be in it to feel it.
Yeah.
When you're watching it, you're just like, wow, like these are the best players in the world. But the opposition players also, it must be difficult when you're standing across from the haka and you're like, we're about to go to war here. This is intimidating. And I know different teams have used different tactics over the years, like, stepping towards them or, hugging each other and things like that. It must just fuel the fire even more.
Yeah, definitely. The haka is so iconic, isn't it? such an iconic moment in sport. You always expect the All Blacks as well to be like the number one in the world, but they haven't been for a little while. It's been South Africa. Now, South Africa, we keep talking about South Africa. We're going to go and experience how South Africa have been able to establish themselves as the number one team in the world for the last wee while and take that off us. It's been a little while at the moment. You always expect All Blacks to get pinched to some stage, the Aussies and the Aussies or South Africa and even England back in 2003. But South Africa have been pretty consistent in being number one, so it'll be interesting to get out there in a few weeks' time, get out to the home of the Sevens or the Rugby Sevens and the conference in Cape Town. So looking forward to that.
Talk about calling the big shots when it comes to your first ever Sports Dentistry conference in a country and doing it at the home of the Blitzbox Sevens in Stellenbosch Academy of Sport. And we've seen obviously photos of where it's going to be, and we've had a good chat with our colleagues out there and the whole setup of it. And because they have been leading the way, not just in the 7 circuit, but as you say, in the 15 circuit as well, and being world champions, twice over in the recent past, they must be doing something right. And we're very fortunate to be in a position where we're going to be heading over, luckily enough to be speaking at the conference as well. And that brings us quite nicely to our next guest, who has been an integral part of making this happen by being the wet-fingered dentist on the ground in the Rainbow Nation.
Yeah, definitely. And it's a great example of someone that has a passion. We've talked about passion before, but this passion to go, I see what everybody else is doing and it's not been done where I am. I want to start something here. I want to grow something here. I want to build something here. And he reached out to us after last year when he was in Edinburgh at the launch of the UK Sports Dentistry Association, and he said, I would love to have something like that in South Africa. So it's going to be great to hear his story and see where he's came from and why he's got this interest to really build something out in South Africa and get this launch event going in a few weeks' time.
It just goes to show you, if you've got vision, if you've got drive, if you've got a little bit of luck go your way, you really can achieve something big. And it's going to be interesting to hear just his side of things and how he's managed to infiltrate South African sport and how he's managed to, from the help with his brother, get to a point where we're just only a few weeks away really from it launching, and hopefully they'll begin to get a partnership going with the South African Sports Medicine Association in years to come and be a real force and a real network in not just South Africa, but Africa itself as a continent too. So it'll be a great conversation to hear it from our good friend Bhavik and see what he has to say.
Yeah, it's going to be good. So let's go. Hey there, Sports Dentistry fam. We've got big news. If you love sport, teeth and travel, you're going to want to listen up.
That's right. The very first South African Sports Dentistry Association conference is happening this year, and you're invited.
Join us in Stellenbosch on Friday the 5th of December 2025 for a day of exciting lectures, expert panels and vibrant networking with sports dentists from across the globe.
Then stick around for a stunning conference dinner under the stars, Stellenbosch style, at the famous Byerskloof Winery. And on Saturday the 6th of December, we head to the world-famous Capetown Sevens Rugby at the DHL Stadium, sitting at the foot of Table Mountain for an epic day of sport, sun and celebration.
It's the perfect blend of education, networking and unforgettable South African energy, all in one weekend.
So, whether you're chasing CPD or chasing Sevens tickets, this is your chance to be part of something truly special.
Come join us in the Rainbow Nation. Tickets are limited. Grab yours now via the link in the description.
The inaugural South African Sports Dentistry Association Conference, December the 5th and 6th, 2025, Stellenbosch and Capetown. We'll see you there.
Gives me great pleasure to welcome to the Sports Dentistry podcast this week, the whole way from South Africa, Bhavik Ganda. How's that? Close? pronunciation wise.
Yeah, that's all good. That's perfect, actually. Yeah, such a pleasure to be, such an honor to be on the podcast. I've been listening to it from the first podcast and following them all. So it's definitely an honor to be on here for the two of you.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. So we've been lucky enough to get to know you a little bit over the last year or so as we've worked together to help launch the South African Sports Dentistry Association coming up this December. But just for our listeners that maybe haven't come across you or know a lot about yourself at the moment, just give us a little bit of a background of how you got into dentistry and how you got into sports dentistry.
Sure, I've been a dentist for the last 15 years, and my dad's a dentist, so I used to always look up to him and ended up following that path and ended up joining him in practice 15 years ago. And yeah, through the years, I kind of like did research into what is sports dentistry, especially because, so we'll touch on to it a bit, like my brother is a sports physician. So I thought to myself, like, whether we could be sports dentists. And I even Googled it like maybe about 4 or 5 years ago. And the only things that actually came up was the masters at UCL, masters in sports dentistry. And there was one in India. And then I let it go for a little bit. And then in 2024, which was last year, beginning of last year, just before that, I ended up getting myself a scanner, and the professional rugby teams throughout the world started getting these instrumented mouth guards being done. And my brother mentioned to one of the guys who was actually organizing all of the scans that I have a scanner up in Johannesburg. And so he seemed quite excited. So he messaged me and we had a little meeting, and he was like, would I be interested in just doing a couple scans in Johannesburg? So I said, yeah, not a problem. So he says, well, I got about 2 to 3 Lions players. So I said, yeah, no problem. And then a week later, so these things all like kind of happen by chance. I think with a lot of us that seems to have been the story. And then he messaged me and he says, listen, the Springboks are actually meeting up in Johannesburg. Would it be possible, or would you be able to go scan the Springbok rugby team if it won't be like inconvenient for you? So I was like, of course that won't be inconvenient for me. Like I'll make a plan and I'll go scan the Springboks. And obviously with my sporting or athletic background, me trying to get into sports industry and was always a big interest. So after like scanning the Springbok rugby team and being and building the sort of networks and contacts with the Springboks, with the Lions rugby team, as well as the Bulls rugby team, which ended up being based in Johannesburg or in Gauteng, like so Johannesburg and Pretoria. And just by building those sort of networks, I ended up getting a few referrals from the Bulls and a few referrals from the Lions. So in that way, the sports dentistry kind of like just snowballed. And yeah, I started getting more and more into the sports dentistry and being more interested in it.
I'll just touch on it, but just give us a little bit of a more insight into your own athletic background. You're saying you're quite into sports. I've seen there recently that you had a bit of a hiccup with your training camp and you had to pull out of a marathon. So give us a wee bit of an insight into your own sort of sporting story.
Yeah, so that too. I've started off doing triathlons maybe about 13, 14 years ago. And with the triathlons, back then there wasn't much responsibility, so I could end up practicing as well as doing my triathlons and being quite competitive. That was myself and my brother. We ended up going to duathlon world championships in Spain and duathlon world championships in Canada. But slowly as I got married and we have a family, like time became a little bit of an issue. And yeah, so you don't have that sort of time. So, and I always wanted to be competitive. So I ended up taking up just running. So since then, it's been mainly just training week in, week out consistently just for different runs. I've done the Comrades, I've done 2 Oceans, I've done a couple marathons. And yes, I was training now for Capetown Marathon, which was actually meant to have been today, which is the 19th of October. And 4 or 5 weeks ago, I ended up falling a bit ill, and yeah, I just didn't recover from it. So that was during like really peak times of the training block, and I decided I just wasn't good enough to get to Capetown Marathon. So yeah, I'll just continue training and eye the next race. So yeah, that's my kind of history. But before that, I mean, I've always been interested in sport and always followed all the different sports like rugby, be it soccer, be it cricket. Yeah, so I've always followed that too.
And just what are the most popular sports in South Africa? I know from myself and Umar being quite heavily involved with rugby and stuff, we obviously see that side of things. But is rugby the main sport of South Africa, or is there other sports that are really popular as well?
Well, obviously now with the Springboks being world champions like twice on now, rugby is one of the most popular. Then obviously cricket and soccer or football. And we've just made it to the FIFA World Cup, the 2026 FIFA World Cup for the first time, I think, since we hosted the World Cup in 2010. So we made it to the World Cup then automatically. But I think the last time that we actually qualified was 2002. So everyone's quite excited about the football too. Yeah, so I would say those are the 3 main sports.
Well, you're ahead of us already. So South Africa is in the FIFA World Cup, Scotland almost, Ireland nowhere to be seen. So,
but you do realise why that is, because they're being managed by a dentist. So if you're going to get a dentist to manage your national soccer team, do you know what I mean?
That's true. You shouldn't be making excuses for it anyway. But yeah, I think that's a great story with regards to what you said there about getting the scanner and that opening up an opportunity for you, and with your brother being heavily involved with the sports medicine side of things as well. It's important that people who are listening who want to try and get involved with sports teams, I think you have to stay with the times. We've talked a lot about digital dentistry on this podcast and how it's starting to change the game, certainly for athletes, and how we're able to manage them and be able to discuss the cases with our colleagues as well all over the world. So it's very simple. If you do have a scan STL file, you can send it to whoever it needs to go to. For example, if there's a mouth guard that needs to be made, I know that elite athletes are getting it through Prevent for the instrumented mouth guards. But it just goes to show you, we also need to stay ahead of the times. Now, that kind of leads us on to quite nicely. You said you did a bit of research a few years ago, and the UK and India were the only places where you could look at doing sort of a sports dentistry qualification, and then it kind of slipped your mind for a little bit. Fast forward a few years and we get to the UK launch of the Sports Dentistry Association, which was in Edinburgh, and that's where you and I first got in touch. Can you give us a bit of a background, kind of what led you to that point to actually commit to coming from South Africa to Edinburgh for that conference?
Yeah, so I mean, people always talk about social media and sometimes how it can be good and sometimes how it can be bad. And I ended up following you, Uma, on Instagram, and seeing that you were doing all of the sports dentistry things. I seemed quite interested. So I thought to myself, let me reach out because I seen that you had done the MSc in sports dentistry at UCL. And I remember messaging you on Instagram and finding out, just to find out whether it was something that I would be interested in doing as well. And you told me it was put on the back burner for a little bit, but you said, why don't I come for the launch of the UK Sports Dentistry Association? And you sent me the invites, and I remember telling my wife, I was like, well, this could be something I could be interested in. And we slowly, decided. At first I thought it was just myself and my wife, and we decided to take the daughter along. And that ended up leading me to actually come to the launch of the UK Sports Dentistry Association. And I've heard John say before, your network is your net worth. And that was exactly what the UK Sports Dentistry, that launch had done. It ended up just opening up a sort of network, me being able to network with you guys, with a few of the dentists over there, just with people with the same sort of interest. But when I got there, I think before that, it almost felt like you guys had this UK Sports Dentistry Association, and it was running for a while, and you guys had everything figured out. And when I got there, I realized that I think we all in like kind of like the same boat, and we're all trying to just push on in like different ways in different areas. Uh, and I thought to myself, well, if you guys have come together to launch a UK Sports Dentistry Association, then why can't we? But I didn't think of that immediately. It took some time and a bit of us chatting for that thought to come about. But me coming to the UK and to Edinburgh was actually pivotal in what we're actually doing now. It's just about building that sort of networks that give you these sort of ideas and being able to leverage off of each other to build this sort of thing worldwide and not only just here.
Yeah, definitely. I think that we talk about a lot about how this platform is really good for interacting with sports dentists internationally, and it's good to understand that everybody's got the same challenges. Sometimes when you look from afar, as you said, you think, that other sports dentists in different countries have maybe already established themselves with the sports medics. It's already an area of dentistry that's sort of respected and a part of the athlete, or automatically part of the athlete support team. But then when you start talking to dentists from every country, we realize we all have the same challenges to try to get sports dentistry to where it needs to be. I'm quite interested to understand the difference between how you're practicing compared to how your father practiced. Do you still practice in the same clinic as your father? And
Yeah.
with the likes of you introducing scanners and stuff, how has he noticed a massive change in how dentistry has developed over the last few decades?
Yeah, so we still practice in the same clinic. And yeah, he's definitely seen a big change in the way that things are being done. So with regards to scanning and doing CEREC and milling and those sort of things, and I do those sort of things, and he just does his thing in his own way. But he's 70 now, so he's definitely taking it a lot easier, and I've encouraged him to take it a lot easier. But for him also, it's like exciting to see in this clinic which he has run or been in for the last 40 odd years, for it to go through the changes. So I enjoy seeing that those changes come through.
And how did you find them with your first interaction? I always find quite interesting to understand the challenges, even just that first interaction with the rugby team. So you were requested to go in. Maybe it was the first few Lions players, did they come to the clinic to get scanned? Was that a little bit easier? Or when you actually went out to the sporting environment, coming in as someone that is actually not part of the setup, going in to get set up again? How did you find that?
So yeah, my first interaction actually ended up being the Springbok rugby team, and ended up being quite overwhelming at first. And I thought to myself, I was like, I'm going into the Springbok camp. I need to be as professional as possible. So it was a Sunday. I remember it was a Sunday, and I wore my scrubs, and I made sure I took everything. I took like toothpaste for them to have and those sort of things. But so yeah, it was overwhelming at first. But then when you started interacting with the players, you ended up realizing that these sometimes just end up being your patients, and you slowly start to see that. And as you become more comfortable, and the more, sometimes also you just need that trust from the medic. I think that's one of the biggest things, is that when the medic doesn't see you as, or the sports physician doesn't see you as being just an outsider, but sees you as an integral part, or at least a part of the whole process, and understands your role and your value into it, you feel a lot more comfortable. So the physician of the Springboks will now call me and say, like, he needs some adjustments done, he needs some scans done, and because of those sort of interactions now, you feel there's less of that imposter syndrome when you're just sitting there and you just don't feel part of it. Yes, there are still teams which you still walk in, that I still walk into. I still walk into the physio room and I still have that imposter syndrome. But most of the teams, as soon as you start to build these sort of relationships and you go in there a few times and they see what you are able to offer to them, you feel definitely a lot more comfortable. So now for most of the teams, I know exactly what I'm doing. You just go in there, you set up in 2 to 3 minutes and you start scanning and you're out of there.
How does it work with you being based in Joburg then, and with South Africa being such a large country? How are you seeing these athletes? How are you seeing the Springboks? How are you seeing the Bulls and Lions? Are they having to travel to you in Joburg? Are you able to travel out with and go to Cape Town or other areas of South Africa with your scanner? It's just, I suppose, for people who are listening who live in countries where it is quite large and it's maybe not as easy to get around, how they'd be able to facilitate it into their workflow.
So I think maybe I should touch on first how I got to seeing some of the teams which are outside of Johannesburg. So, I mean, at first I was only seeing everybody that was in Johannesburg, and that was last year. And so the Springboks had a camp here, and whenever they had the camp here, then the doctor would contact me and I would go through and see them. The Bulls are about an hour away from my practice, and if they need me, I'll go through and I'll sort it out. Lions, a lot of the players do end up coming to the practice because it's not that far. And if I need to go in to see them, then I'll go in to see them as well. Then after the UK Sports Dentistry conference, I got back and I started thinking to myself, how can I integrate this into South Africa, and not even just rugby, into different sports, and how can we get ourselves more involved? And I ended up drafting out the letter and ended up sending it out to a few of the heads of medicals of some of the teams. And I was chatting to my brother as well, and he was like, well, we can send it to the general manager of SA Rugby as well. And I did send an email out through to him, just explaining to him what we could do in terms of screening, in terms of prevention, in terms of being able to provide mouth guards, or even just having a sort of network so that if there's any sort of injuries, it would be sorted out quickly. Anyway, I didn't get a reply for some time from, well, especially the SA Rugby guys. And then earlier this year, all of a sudden, I just received an email to say, are you still interested in this? And I said, yes, I am still interested. And I was like, but actually, so we ended up setting up a meeting, and Flint, who's the general manager of medical for SA Rugby, was actually speaking and opening the conference, the South African Dental Association conference. We had a meeting together, and he says, well, if you are doing this, then why don't I just see all the teams for the Currie Cup this year and scan all the teams? So I said, okay. He asked me, do I have the capacity to do so? And I said, yeah, no problem. I knew it's going to be a tough ask because there's many teams and we all over the show. That means, so there were days which I flew into Cape Town, left home at 4 a.m, landed there, seen 40 players by like between 10 and 1 o'clock, then drive off from Stellenbosch off to Cape Town, seeing another 50 players in Western Province, and then heading back to the airport, flying straight back to Johannesburg. And I ended up splitting it just into different weeks, seeing different teams. Sometimes I would end up driving to Bloemfontein, which was 3.5 to 4 hours, and then seeing some players there, and then driving back home. So yeah, I did end up doing a bit of hard work for that period of time.
Yeah, I can only imagine because I would help out with the four provinces in Ireland, and I think they're quite far away, but that's nothing compared to the geographical distance that you have to cover. Just I would like to just have a think about the planning for that. So you were going in, I don't know, when we were first doing the squads as well over here, that we were seeing maybe 30, 40 players, or I don't think we've ever seen as many up to 50, but definitely 40 something players. How did you do that by yourself? Like, how did you plan the visit? What I would try to do is I try to do like 3 players per 10 minutes or a player per 5 minutes, but you're still a little bit under time pressure when you have them large numbers. How did you plan them visits then? Did you have some assistants? Did you use one scanner? Did you use multiple scanners? How did you logistically plan the players to come through to get scanned and things like that? Just give us a wee bit of an insight on how you were able to achieve that.
So the biggest thing is actually just having that sort of relationship with the team physician or whoever's organizing it. And yeah, I ended up doing all of these scans by myself. I travel around with my scanner. And yeah, it's just one scanner, and you end up saying in 15 minutes, I would see, and I think we were doing 15 minutes about 4 players. So I ended up working it out, and you can end up doing about 20 players about in an hour. So in that way there, you're able to, and the biggest thing is just making sure that the players are there, because scanning goes quite quickly. And once you get the hang of what needs to be scanned, especially for what's needed for the IMGs, it does end up going quite quickly. So I was able to do that by myself. I'd go in there, set things up, know exactly what is needed, everything on my back, get in there, take everything out, and yeah, set up. So yeah, everything was done by myself.
If you were to compare that to if you didn't have a scanner, you'd have to have a nurse or somebody who would be there with you to help mix
Yeah.
things up and clean things up, and you'd have to take the alginate with you and the pads and the mixing bowls and all that sort of stuff. But the fact that you had a scanner obviously makes it a lot easier for you to then go to these places to do the scan. And if the scanner is working and it's behaving, I agree with you. You can get through scans very, very fast. And if you just got a new one, then there shouldn't be any issue with that. Some things that we've had in the past is some of the older scanners that we used to use. When you would go and see the players, if we would go to the Orium to see the Scotland players, we'd have 2 scanners because Itero would they would give us a scanner to use if we needed it for whatever reason. That would be super quick, and our old one would just be delayed, and it would take ages to scan. And you know, the athletes can sometimes get a little bit like, "Why is it taking so long?" But it's actually the scanner itself which is causing the problem. But for you to have invested in technology opened up a world to you which you might thought didn't existed. So I also say to people who want to get into sports dentistry, or if it's something that they're interested in, you have to invest in yourself. That doesn't necessarily mean you go and spend 20k or 30k on a scanner, but certainly, you know, improving yourself clinically in terms of, you know, even taking photos and being able to show the medical staff what it is that you can do and what you can deal with, you know, showing them some of your before and afters to create a portfolio of work that you can then show that the players, they can then trust you, because a lot of things, people now look at social media, they look at websites, and they want to see a portfolio of work before they invest in doing something. It's like if we were to go to a restaurant, we would like to read reviews, or we like to see what sort of food they've got in their menus. I do think there's a lot of similarities when it comes to players and athletes choosing you as a clinician as well, because it's just because you're affiliated with it or affiliated with a team or an organization doesn't necessarily mean that the players and their other halves have to see you. So it's important that you build your trust and you build your capacity to be able to evolve with the times and to be able to show that. So with doing all those scans and having that base and that portfolio, that will also mean that in the years to come, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to do that many scans again, because as long as they've not had any additional work done, you can reuse those scans to send away. So that will save you a lot of time in the future as well. Yes, you put in the hard yards early doors, which a lot of us have had to do. So I think that's something for people to think about, is that yes, you need to give up a lot of your time. You're away from your family, unsociable times as well, because obviously the players are getting together at certain days of the week or certain times of the week. then that's something that you've just got to do. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. It's firstly, yes, it is about investing in yourself and being able to upskill yourself as well. And I mean, like you said, if I didn't have the scanner, and before this, we would go in there and mixing things and then taking all these measurements. And yes, the hard yards do end up being you do have to do the hard yards, and you do have to put in the work for some of the teams and things to also trust you. And slowly, yes, once the teams start trusting you, those team physicians are the ones that then refer their players to you. They then end up trusting you and seeing what you can do for them. And you always end up making a plan for them, because I think once you start getting involved in these sort of squads, you start to also realize that they don't have a lot of time. They'll have an off day here, they'll have an off day there. And on the outside, it almost seems like, yes, but they are sportsmen. They can come. Like, what are they doing? They can come to us at any time. But I think it's once you start getting more involved with the sports teams, you realize that they have like maybe one day off. So like, I remember seeing one of the Lions players, and that Lions player got referred from the Lions staff itself, and he ended up needing a bit of work and needed actually 2 bridges to be done. And I said, you've only got one day to do this, because he was training the day before, and the Wednesday was the day that he could do it. And normally Wednesday is my half day. And I said, no, but don't worry. Like, you come in the morning. I'll prepare it for you. I will scan you, and I will mill your bridge, and I'll get it to you by the afternoon. And we ended up putting in 2 3-unit bridges on the same day. And those are the sort of things that players end up appreciating, because you're able to give them that sort of service. But it's also you knowing that they don't have that sort of time. But it's those sort of things that do end up starting to build the trust with the players, with like you said, their better halves. And yeah, but I think it's only once you start to know the way that these players actually operate and how the training sessions and things go, are you able to help them in ways which they need.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with that 100%. I think that's where the practice builder starts to kind of snowball and become, your name starts to get out there. People then are able to say, actually, I know somebody who can do something in the same day. I don't do any milling or any CEREC. I outsource all my stuff to the lab, so I don't actually know too much about that. So I'd be quite interested to kind of hear that process. Is that something that you do because labs are further away? Is it something that you've learned to do because of your dad or your father would do that? Is that because I don't know much about that? So can you give us a little bit of information as to why you do it that way rather than outsource it to labs?
Funny enough, my lab is down the road from me, so I don't think they were too happy when they heard that I got a milling machine. But it's something that I'm also passionate about. I enjoy the designing, I enjoy the milling, I enjoy being able to give that sort of service to my patients. Of course, some of the more aesthetic cases, then I still use my lab or multi-unit, but a lot of my single unit and some of my 3-unit bridges and things that I will sit and I'll design, and that sort of thing I enjoy. So it's something that we always wanted to introduce into the practice, and finally we did end up doing it. And yeah, and it's a nice thing also to be able to give to the athletes with some of the same day sort of treatments, especially with them traveling, and yeah, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic, especially if you're working with sports dentistry. I don't have access to the milling setup at the moment, but I did about 10 years ago when I was working as an associate, working in practice for a good few years with it, and it does give you great flexibility, especially maybe people come in with broken teeth. It's really easy then to do an egg on leg crown, same day visit. It's fantastic that way. And again, like you said yourself, set of cases. Maybe for the Ontario ones, we would have sent them out as well. But I do think it is fantastic. Have you looked into the 3D printing side of things as well, or is milling? I think milling's still quite superior when it comes to like restorations and stuff. But I know with 3D printing, it's got really big recently, and where you can 3D print crowns and things like that as well. Is that something that has developed down to South Africa as well? Is there much buzz going on about that?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of attraction which has been building with the 3D printing, especially with the sprint ray coming up with that Midas. I do see there has been a few dentists which have been getting onto that pod system, and I have looked at printing myself, but I haven't thought of really printing permanent restorations as yet. I mean, I've done a bit of research, but it doesn't seem like the material's strong, as strong as what we can do on a milling machine as yet. But also, obviously, on the sports dentistry side as well, I've been looking at like the 3D printers and also thinking of 3D printing mouth guards. But I don't think our material. I've looked at the material for 3D printing mouth guards, and I think it's still just a little bit too rigid, or at least that's what the players find, that it's a bit more rigid than what we using like with the Pro Form and things. But yeah, that being said, I'm sure there's definitely companies out there. I mean, we know of companies out there which are doing some research into 3D printing mouth guards. So yeah, but it's definitely picked up a lot of traction here as well.
In sports dentistry, it's not just about treating injuries. It's about optimizing oral health for peak performance.
That's right, because when athletes push their limits, every detail matters, even their oral health.
That's why the Sports Dentistry podcast is being powered by Philips, true innovators in oral health technology.
Philips Sonicare toothbrushes use advanced sonic technology to disrupt plaque biofilm, removing up to 20 times more plaque than a manual brush.
And that's critical for athletes. With high carb diets, dry mouth, and frequent energy supplements, there are greater risk of caries and gum disease.
Philips backs evidence-based dentistry, giving us tools that fit perfectly into performance-driven treatment plans.
So whether you're helping your athletes recover, protect, or perform,
elevate your protocol with Philips.
Yeah, myself and Umar, we had a conversation about 3D printed mouth guards, and we're not sure if it would take off because it's not really solving a problem, because our solution at the moment now for a mouth guard is a great solution from a protection point of view and a fit point of view and a comfort point of view. So with the development technology, 3D printing sounds exciting, but whether it actually takes off or not, because it's not really solving a problem, it's just giving us another option, which may or may not be better than what we have at the moment. So if we move away from the mouth guards and stuff too, we've talked a lot about rugby and that side of things, but with the sport that you do yourself and the triathlon and the long distance running and the marathons, have you done much? Is there much sports dentistry traction around that when we're looking at the likes of oral health and the impact of oral health on athletic performance?
Over here in South Africa, I haven't seen a lot of research being done in terms of marathons and long distance running and sports dentistry. So over here, we haven't seen all that much. I'm not sure if you've seen a lot of it on that side though.
With the oral health, a lot of it seems to still be done with teams and team sports, and possibly the reason for that would be then it's a lot easier to get the numbers that you would need for research. Like with individual sports, it's going to be quite difficult to get maybe your screening done and things like that, just to get the participant number up to actually get some quality data. So you can have a look at comparisons and things like that. And that's possibly why there hasn't been as much research into the oral health of triathletes and long distance runners that compared to when the oral health of the athletes has been assessed at soccer teams and rugby teams. And I know there was research done into the GB Roars and at major competitions. And that's probably the reason, because you have a higher number of athletes at the same time that you're able to screen, and there's possibly that challenge of setting up a study just to look into individual types of sports and looking at their oral health to try to get the numbers up. And I think that would be the main challenge for it. But it's particularly interesting, possibly with the long distance runners and stuff, just because their nutritional demands, particularly during competition and training, will be completely different than maybe the team sports of 80 minutes and 90 minutes, the likes of rugby and soccer, and probably the amount of carbohydrate intake is probably a lot higher during them long distance runs and stuff. So that would maybe, it'd be good, interesting to see that sort of impact and whether that has an impact on oral health. Do you notice that yourself with being a dentist, competing in the triathletes and marathons when it comes to nutrition and fueling your body for them? Have you looked at it from the consequences that it would have on your oral health, or have you just been looking at it from fueling your body?
So I definitely have, and something that we definitely think of because, well, I think of because recently there's been a lot of traction in marathons and long distance sort of sports to have a larger amount of carbohydrates per hour. And we're almost going to, before it used to be like just having about 30 grams of carbohydrates, and that comes in those little gel forms, and that generally has a large amount of sugar in them. And now we've almost gone to, I mean, the coaches and nutritionists have started recommending having almost 60 grams of carbs per hour. Some of the athletes are almost going to 100 grams. So they're almost getting they got used to having this amount of carbs, but having that amount of carbs and consistently over 3-4 hours, you got to think of what's that doing to your oral health as well. The other thing which I did find and was I used to have a magnesium. So I normally have magnesium in the evenings, and I thought to myself, there was a magnesium which is called Slow Mag, and the Slow Mag has an effervescent, and it's a nice berry flavor. And I thought to myself, I'll have this here in the evening. And then I thought to myself, what am I doing to my oral health though? And I stopped having that. Then I've reverted back to just having the tablets. But if I go into some of the squads, the rugby squads, and you even look there, the amount of this slow mag and effervescent that they are having on a daily basis is quite high. And you see that because it's lined up everywhere and everyone's having that. So it's those sort of things that we probably have to educate both like endurance athletes as well as some of the squads on what these products may have, on what impact it may have on their oral health.
Yeah, the athletes are taking fuel on board from the advice of nutritionists and dietitians. And we've said it many times before that it's not something that we can say they cannot have this or they cannot have that, because that's not what we're there to do. We're there to help with educating with regards to what effects this could have on their oral health and what negative impacts it could have, and just turning that around so we can help facilitate that and help them to a degree, right? I think it's really important that we don't go in all guns blazing saying this is wrong, that's wrong. That's not how the way it works. And interesting, you talked about carbohydrates and how much they should be taken on. And we had David Dunn on at the Manchester conference. He talked about the cyclist taking on carbs every 30 minutes. And, if they're on the bike for 5, 6, 7 hours, that's a hell of a lot, but they need that energy to help keep them going. It's really important that we work closely with the medical team, the nutritionists, the physiotherapists, the medics. As you said at the start, it's very important that we feel valued and an integral part of it, that we can give our advice on what we can do to try and help these athletes and other medical staff improve on their knowledge when it comes to oral health and performance. I think looking forward, you said that once you'd got involved with the Springboks and you'd been doing a lot more scanning, we mentioned before that your brother is quite heavily involved with the South African Sevens and the medical team. You then reached out and said, look, South Africa's got such a massive sporting prowess, massive sporting culture. Now is a good time to look at creating an association with sports dentistry. So can you just talk us through your thinking behind that and what made you come to the realization that this is something that South Africa is ready for?
Yeah, so like I said earlier, and as I spoke about the UK Sports Dentistry Association and seeing the way that came about. And when I was there, and I thought to myself, this is not hasn't been formed in South Africa, and a lot of South African dentists don't even understand that we do have a space and we do have a role to play with regards to sports, be it on a community level or on an elite level. And I remember, I can't even remember who was the first person who sent the message between myself and you, Omar, whether you mentioned to me, should we have a sort of conference and pair it up with the sevens?
I
And
might have
uh,
said it's quite sunny in Capetown in early December. I think it's probably a good
Yeah.
time.
I would say Umar was looking at an excuse to go and get a bit of sunshine.
I remember us forming a group, and I ended up messaging my brother, and I told him, "Listen, I think this may be a good idea. I think maybe we need to set up and do a bit of a conference." And he was like, "Okay, but who's doing the conference? Are we doing the conference, or is the UK Sports Dentistry Association doing the conference?" And eventually, we realized this is going to be our baby to take along, and but slowly we said we're going to do the conference, but also soft launch the South African Sports Dentistry Association. I hate to say, I don't like to say that there was like a sort of gap in the in the in this sort of area, but more there was an area for us to introduce sports dentistry to South African dentists, to sports physicians, nutritionists, just in South Africa, just for them to understand that there is space for us as well. So anyway, so that's how it kind of came about. So it ended up being the four of us on this group and us chatting along for the entire year and not realizing whether this conference would happen or not. And slowly things started to fall into place and snowball together. And yes, so we are forming the South African Sports Dentistry Association, and it is going to be a soft launch at the conference. And then thereafter, we would like to find out who has that same sort of vision and who has that same sort of interest. And in that way, they'll be able to build a committee and to be able to build the South African Sports Dental Association in South Africa. Yeah.
Yeah, you have a great opportunity here, especially from the conversations we have had with your brother being a sports medic and heavily involved with the Springbok and having good connections. And there's already a South African Sports Medicine Association who are very keen to incorporate a South African Sports Dentistry Association, which we have found, and lots of other people found in other countries, that's the hardest bit, is getting that buy-in from the sports medics, from the sports medicine community. So there's a great opportunity here, I think, for you guys in South Africa to really build something that's strong and lasting as well. So sustainable. And this is probably why I would be very keen on this sort of suggestion of, when, even though it's like the first conference and it's a launch, to try to keep it manageable. So that's why we've sort of kept it to 1 day of education instead of 2-3 days. And so it's something that we can maybe very easily replicate and run on an annual basis. I do find, and this is maybe a conversation for a different day, but I do find it's going to be quite interesting because there's a lot of associations starting off and they're doing quite a big launch and they're maybe doing a 2-day conference. And I'm trying to think, well, how are they going to be able to replicate that next year or replicate that on a regular basis? So I think there's a unique opportunity here in South Africa because of the connections you've already built with the Springboks, having them connections to the sports medicine community, that there is something that's really exciting here. Let's just chat a wee bit on the launch, the conference and the launch. Where's it taking place? What's the plan? Why should people attend?
So we're having like you said, we're having a a two-day event. We're having the first day, which is the 5th of December, which is happening in Stellenbosch at the Stellenbosch Academy of Sport. So we will have a full day of education with some fantastic speakers. We started to announce some of the speakers which are coming through. We have the likes of Clint Redhead, who is the general manager of medical at SA Rugby, who's going to be speaking. We're going to have our very own Uma, who's speaking. John will be there speaking. So we have some really good speakers. We're going to then have a dinner in the evening, which is going to be at the Bayerskloof Wine Estate. I think John is really looking forward to a little bit of wine. And we will then head off for the Capetown Sevens rugby on the 6th of December. And that always ends up being a nice little festival for the day. So it's a nice way to have a little bit of education, a little bit of networking. As I've listened to the two of you speak on the podcast, that's one of the most important things. And I've found that too. It's actually the networking. And then, a little bit of sport just to take the delegates along to as well, just to have a little bit of fun.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Just go into a wee bit in Stellenbosch. So Stellenbosch, it's the sports centre. It's the rugby union headquarters, is it? It's the home of the Springbok in South Africa. Is that where they get together for camps? But what happens in Stellenbosch where the conference is going to be held?
So the Stellenbosch Academy of Sports, that's like a high performance center, which is actually the home of the Sevens rugby team, the Springbok Sevens. And so that's where they normally train and they get together. So I think it's the perfect venue for us to have our first sports dentistry conference.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing the venue and seeing, because that's really interesting. I find that as well when I go in to help teams, seeing the facilities, seeing the setup. It's always great and interesting to see. And then we're going for some wine, and then we've got the sport the next day in the sevens. So looking forward to it. What are your goals to achieve out of it? What are you hoping to achieve from the conference?
So I remember having a meeting or discussion, and one of the biggest expectations of SA Rugby itself was to almost form a network of dentists throughout South Africa with the interest in sport, but also being able to assist teams whenever is needed, which would obviously reduce the amount that someone like me has to travel around to do certain things. So I think that's the biggest thing. It's almost to just create a network of like-minded people, and in that way they be able to share, grow, and build a community of sports dentistry in South Africa. That I would say that's probably one of the biggest things, is just building a good community and a good network. That, I mean, I've built this sort of network where the Bulls have messaged me and they're in Ireland and they need a adjustment to be done to a mouth guard, and I'm able to call on John and he's able to get there on the same afternoon. I mean, that's the sort of thing that we would like to build here in South Africa too, where if somebody from Durban calls me, I must be able to call on a dentist to say, please go help out. So I think that's the biggest thing, is just building that sort of network that we can rely on.
Yeah, so we helped out with the Bulls the day before they played Ulster, and then Ulster gave them a good beating. So there is question marks. Did I go in and sabotage? Did I go in to sabotage things the day before, or did I go in to help? That's the question.
Yeah, that being said, I had also earlier, I think a few days before I asked you with regards to the adjustments, one of the Springbok players actually messaged me and told me, Doc, I left my mouth guard in my bag and I don't have it with me. And I said, where are you? And he said, no, I'm in Swansea. So he said, please can you send my scan off to me so that I can go to a dentist over here and maybe they can make a mouth guard for me. and because of coming for the UK conference, I ended up building networks with Lyndon from Wales, and ended up calling him, and he made a plan for us and got the mouth guard to him within a couple of days, and yeah, the player was on the field with the mouth guard.
That's good.
But that's an important point that you've alluded to there, is about creating a network of people that you can trust, that you can call upon, because sports dentists, we're on call all the time. You just never know when your phone's going to go off with a question mark or with a bit of advice. So it's really important that you're able to then get into your phone, get into WhatsApp, and able to communicate with whoever needs to be communicated with all over the world, not just for us in the UK, for you in South Africa. And I really think that the South African Sports Dentistry Association will be able to provide you with a network of like-minded people, because you'll find people coming to the event who maybe didn't even know that it existed, and that there is people out there who are doing the sort of things that you're doing, and even venturing as far and taking it out into the continent of Africa itself. And it's something that we shouldn't put a limit on where we can achieve, or where you can go with things, or where we in the UK can go with things. And I think the best thing is that we're able to create a similar sort of program in South Africa than what we've done in the UK, with the unique selling point being going to a sporting event. And I've said before that South Africa are so well thought of when it comes to sporting and athletic capabilities, that there's no shortage of sports that people can go to, and what you guys can do in the future. But I'm very much looking forward to getting out there, and I'm very lucky to have been there before and had my honeymoon there, and the people just magnificent. The food is unbelievable. It's just a beautiful country, and I'm really looking forward to touching base again with you. Less so with John, but still, well, I'm sure we'll have a cracking few days. And the important thing is, we want you guys to succeed. If we didn't think this was possible, then we'd probably not put our name to it. But we're putting ourselves out there because we really believe in what you guys are doing, and very appreciative that you've asked us to help you out. And I think if there's other countries out there who can take a leaf out of your book than what you guys are doing, then great. Because it's not easy. It's been a lot of hard work. There's been a lot of Zoom meetings. There's been a lot of WhatsApp messages, getting sponsors, getting speakers, getting things going on the socials. We're very lucky to have a really good network of people around us just now who have been helping. And, a big shout out to Imogen, who's done wonders on the social side of things, and to your brother to get in the contacts, and for yourself to get in the contacts and the sponsors. So yeah, if you want to plug it one more time, then you can do.
Yeah, it's Anna, it's that nervousness whenever you go to launch an event. You're almost thinking like, will anybody want to go, and will anybody buy a ticket? But be rest assured, if nobody buys tickets, me and Umar will definitely enjoy ourselves and make the most out of it. So
I must say thank you to the two of you for putting in all the hard work as well into helping us to get this going, to launching it. The two of you, to my brother as well, to Imogen for doing all the socials. My brother has been quite pivotal in actually getting this going. He's got the networks, to be able to tap into for, and like we've said before, is that it's those sports physicians, and he's a sports physician, and he understands where we fit into it, and to have him right there to actually drive it through has been, extremely helpful. And then I remember actually in the last couple of weeks, one of the speakers called me, and his first words to me was, "Why are you making so much of hard work for yourself?" And and my answer to him was, when I see some of the clinicians out there, especially these educators and who go out there and lecture and who we look up to, and I told him, I was like, I see that spark in you, and I want that same spark, and I want that spark to be there for a long time, and I see the spark in you guys too. So it's that sort of inspiration that almost makes you want to do it. And then I read a quote the other day, and it was, if it scares you and excites you at the same time, you're doing the right thing.
yeah, I guess that's a great quote. I think that's a good way to leave the podcast as well. We'll leave it on that quote. So, like we've spent a good hour having a chat, and I'm sure we could spend a lot more, especially if we start chatting about sports. So really looking forward to the conference. As we've chatted about, if anybody is thinking about going, who more promises us sun, and I think we'll definitely get it. But he was trying to promise us sun in Manchester, but like I didn't really believe him. I didn't think there was going to be too much sun out in Manchester. We did get a little bit, but I think that the temperatures are going to be a lot better, a lot better out in Cape Town in December. So if you're looking at a bit of winter sun, there's no better way to get it. So thanks very much for your time. It's always good to chat. We're looking forward to the build up to the conference in December.
Yeah, thanks very much, Bhavik. And I think one last thing I just wanted to say was that some of the presenters that you have on the educators on the list, the program list, are very well known in South Africa. Not just South Africa, actually worldwide. So if anybody is thinking about going and they're not sure about, is it going to be a good quality of program, rest assured that the clinicians that you have asked to come on and who are going to be presenting are world renowned for what they do. So it would definitely be worth everybody's while getting some CPD, coming to Barriscliffe, and then to Cape Town for the sevens.
And I think, I'm sure we can announce this at the moment, but Align Technologies are the platinum sponsor of the conference, and Align Technologies don't sponsor conferences if they don't think it's going to be a big success. So I think that also adds to how big of a success this is going to be. Thanks very much for your time, Bhavik. We will chat again soon.
Thanks, Bhavik.
Thank you so much for having me.
We are delighted to have Ionate as a sponsor for the Sports Dentistry podcast. Are you looking for a water bottle that's built to keep up with your active lifestyle? Look no further than Ionate, the totally leak-proof water bottles with triple lock technology to prevent spills no matter where you're headed. With a simple one-touch opening mechanism, you can sip on the go without hassle. Plus, Ionate's sleek, modern designs are not only functional but can be personalized just for you. Made from high-quality steel, these bottles are easy to clean, and best of all, they're sustainable. From 320 mils to 1200 mils, Ionate has the perfect size for you, whether you're just out for a jog or going on a long hike. And it doesn't stop at water bottles. Ionate also has travel mugs and flasks to keep your drinks just right wherever you are. Ionate is the official water bottle supplier to the British and Irish Lions on their tour to Australia this summer, and are the official water bottle supplier to the NFL, so you know you're getting the best. I have been using their bottles for a long time now and cannot recommend them highly enough. So head over to www.ionate.co.uk to get your hands on the best bottles in the business, bar none. Now back to the pod.
I've started to get excited after that conversation. Umar, I don't know about you, but I'm starting to get excited.
I just want to ask you, which part are you getting excited about?
I've seen, actually, way social media has these algorithms, and sometimes your phone listens to you.
Yeah.
The latest one, and I completely forgot about this, but the latest one was a shark attack in Cape Town. That was the latest one of me. And I completely forgot. That's where the great white sharks hang out. It's like off the coast of Australia and down at the bottom of Cape Town.
That's where we'll be going, my friend. We'll be going swimming around that neck of the woods. And
I'm not sure I'll be taking a wee dip in the ocean anyway, for sure.
Well, actually, last time I've been to South Africa once before. We went there for a honeymoon, and very lucky to have gone to the Cape Town Sevens at that time. And the atmosphere, the stadium, just where it is in the city, it's very easy to get to. Beautiful stadium. It was roasting hot that day, and it was like a carnival kind of party atmosphere, and watching top quality sport in the sunshine in a different country. I'm absolutely buzzing.
Yeah, I'm definitely absolutely buzzing. Although, as well, the second thing that I found out this week was the start time of the sevens. I can't promise I'm going to see the first few games on the Saturday morning because it starts at 6:45 a.m.
6:45 a.m. You'll still just be wide awake at that point, I reckon.
Yeah. I maybe have to have a wee snooze in between the two sessions.
Yeah.
The morning session and the evening session of the rugby sevens.
But it's good they just released the actual lineup, the speaker lineup for the day, and there's some really fantastic speakers on show, and some very well-known clinicians in South Africa itself, not just dentists, but medics. And it's really exciting to see it come to fruition, because we've spent a lot of time between me, you, Bhavik, and Jinesh, and literally with our social media guru, Imogen, who's been helping getting things out there. And it is really exciting to see it come together. It probably won't really hit home until we're actually there. It's one of these things where we've talked about we talked about the UK one for so long, it came and went. We've talked about the Dusseldorf one for so long, it's going to come and go. But the South African one, because we've been so much part of getting the program together, it will be really exciting to see just how it unfolds, because that can go to show us just what can be achieved from other nations who felt like they didn't know what to do, or they didn't know how to do it. And we know some of our good friends have created some organizations in Europe, such as the Baltics with Ruta, and it's people like them who will be inspirational to people listening, be like, you know what, if these guys can do it, then I can do it.
Yeah, definitely. And talking about sharks there and big fish, he was able to land some big fish as sponsors. Like,
oh yes.
Do you know what I mean? So, like, if you're only doing a launch event, you don't even have a membership group, you don't even know how many's turn up to the conference, but yet you've got Align Technologies throwing down the dollar, wanting to get involved. You know, Vivek has got something about him.
He definitely does. Quiet guy. He's a man of mystery, isn't he, Vivek? Just very well-spoken, quiet, but behind those beautiful dark eyes, he must have something in him that can people say, I want to be part of that. Because to have a company like Align, and there's actually many other sponsors there too, but for Align being the platinum sponsor and really being the driving force behind helping getting it up off the ground running is magnificent. And that should give everybody confidence that actually dentistry and sports industry definitely has its place in the medical dental field as time goes on, and very much being an integral part of the team, which is where Vivek has managed to become the South African Rugby team dentist, and they ask him advice and he's able to see a lot of the players as well. So it's great to see that story and hear his story about how he's managed to get to where he is now, and hopefully it'll continue to improve for him as time goes on. And you know, we're very lucky to call him a friend of ours, and it was a great conversation. I thought he came across very, very well, and it's still a few weeks away, so you know, it's an easy flight to get there. And talking about flights, John, have you booked yours yet?
Not yet. No, not yet. Still looking at options, still trying to get the last little bit of Bernie point away. But I won't be doing, I know it's only a few weeks away, but it's not long enough to get me training enough to go for a run with Vivek. That's what I won't be doing. He's doing too big of a distance. He says distances are way too big. And by the sounds of it, he's doing them at way too fast a pace for me to even consider. If he's doing maybe like a warm-up jog before he's going for a run, I might join that part.
That's yeah. He's like, bring your running stuff. We'll go for a run. Yeah, brilliant. It's convenient that I've just got injured on the plane on the way over.
Unless we're doing laps, and you know, he can like still be in the vicinity.
Exactly. Yeah. As long as there's pit stops along the way, because it's going to be warm, hopefully.
Yeah. Looking forward to it. So, another great conversation, another good podcast. Touched on some very, very important topics to kick the podcast off this time. And it's good. I think it's good that we approach these things. We approached the serious conversation last week about suicide and this week about cancer. So I'm not sure there's many more. I can only get up from here.
It's going to have to go up. It's going to have to go up. We can't keep doing that. Can't keep doing that.
We've covered them two biggies. Like I don't know if there's much out there that could top them two.
Not much. Well, look, we can laugh about it because I think it's important that we do. It is what it is, right? You don't know why these things happen, and you know, you take the positives from it as much as you can, and it's important that we can reflect on it and say, you know, we one of the lucky ones. You know, my wife's one of the lucky ones, hopefully, and everything will be okay. But we are human after all, and it's important that we discuss these topics. But we'll try and get a little bit more bit more banter, a little bit more uplifting in the next episode. But it's always a pleasure, John, to catch up with you, and you always bring a smile to my face, my friend.
Definitely. But it is important because
nobody else can see your face now apart from me. Bring a smile to my face.
That's going to change. It's still a change of it. That's store hopefully. But is it? Or we mentioned at the start, like some of our athletes are going to be going through this, and it's important that we have the ability to talk about it and be able to give them support, and you'll be able to have your life experience that'll help in that as well. So
yeah,
always good chatting, Raymore.
Okay, my friend.
Until the next time.
Until the next time.
That's soon.
Good man.